Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Jim Lee's Wildcats number 13, cover dated September 1994, and this is the fourth and final part of a storyline that reunited Jim Lee with his X-Men collaborator Chris Claremont. And the story introduced the character of the Huntsman here and features and focuses primarily on Zealot and an old antagonism or relationship she has with this new character called Tapestry. But on this final cover of the four-part story, Jim Lee decides he wants to draw a Grifter because Grifter didn't really show up in the first two parts of the storyline, but he wants to draw him here. So here he is front and center. So it's a pretty cool cover and good work on it by Jim Lee and Williams. What I really particularly like, I mean, there's no backgrounds on this or anything, so Joe Chiodo on the computer coloring is adding a lot to the art here. But I'll just like this effect where he takes over the hatching, the cross hatching on Huntsman's leg there, so it transfers from being ink based into color there. That's just a nice little effect that I noted and I think is interesting. So let's open this one up to the credits page. There's two stories in this issue. The first one, Wildcats, it's that part 4, story by Chris Claremont, pencils Jim Lee, ink Scott Williams. Okay, that's all great. But wait a minute, there is another inker on board, Alve, for 4 pages. I'll point those out as we go along. And this is very notable here and disappointing too. Pencil assists from Ryan Benjamin and Dan Norton. And what that means is it's clear to me on a few of these pages that Jim Lee probably just produced breakdowns, maybe even rougher than that, and handed it over to Ryan Benjamin and Dan Norton to finish the pencils. And so we don't have the same consistency of Jim Lee penciling on this issue as we had on the other 3 earlier parts of the storyline. Letters by Richard Starkins and Comic Craft rather than Tom Warzakowski. So again, another deviation from the first 4 parts. And even Scott Williams is getting ink assists here from JD and John Ty. So just there isn't the purity of the creative collaboration on this 4th part, which was not in the original plan. The original advertisement for the storyline was for 3 parts only. So probably the story growing into this 4th part necessitated these assists and other helping hands. And then there's a 6-page backup story, The Price, by Chris Claremont, penciled by Richard Johnson, inked by Carl Story, and lettered by Tom Warzakowski. Joe Chiodo on colors throughout, with an assist from Martin Jimenez. So the story picks up with an event from the previous issue, which seemed to result in Voodoo, possessed by a Raksha, absorbing the life force of Jules here, but that's not quite what happens. So we revisit that scene. It's all taking place at night, so the coloring's a little bit on the dark side, but it works okay if you've got a print issue and you can peruse it with your own eye. So Stillwell comes out of the car here and puts a shotgun up against Voodoo's head, but Voodoo is switching back and forth between having command or no command over herself because of the Raksha that's possessing her there. And then her friends here decide that they're going to give her a little bit of their life force. They're going to trust her that she won't take it all in order to purge herself of the Raksha, because of course that's Voodoo's power, whereby she's able to purge people who are possessed by Daemonites. So why not this Raksha alien as well? So that's what happens there. And then we switch back to the fight that's taking place at the construction site, the Halo construction site, between mind-possessed members of the Wildcats, including Jacob Marlowe there, Maul and Warblade, as Warblade's there, and also Spartan 2. They've all been taken over and corrupted body and soul by Tapestry, the new antagonist. So Huntsman here and Grifter are teaming up against the mind-possessed slaves of Tapestry. So there's a little bit of banter back and forth between them. And also it catches up readers in terms of what's been going on so far, and the fact that Huntsman feels he owes Zealot a debt, and that's why he's sticking around. So then the scene switches to Zealot herself, who has been transformed physically and in her soul in the previous issue when she tapped into power that she'd forsworn. So she has a little bit of a different physical appearance, particularly her hair there, and she's watching the fight from this vantage point. Also, here's Miranda, the princess that Huntsman is a protector of, and she also had her clothing transformed in the previous issue. And Savant is ostensibly Zealot's little sister, but that's not quite who she is. And that there has been hints in the previous issue and the backup story regarding Mr. Majestic, regarding who exactly Savant is and what her true relationship might be to Zealot. So they're all struggling against Maul, and it's a little bit, I don't know, disappointing that Majestic, who was built up so much in that backup story to be a type of Superman, is struggling against Maul, whose power is to grow bigger and stronger, but like, he's not omnipotent, and surely Majestic should be able to deal with him a bit better. But he's frustrated here, saying, is there no end to this? The harder I hit Maul, the larger he grows. And this is some nice work on this page, by the way, from Lee. So some of the pages, in my opinion, seem to have more of his interest, and he seems to do some interesting things. Like, for instance, in this panel, I like the angle here, the upshot on Zealot's head, and I like the angle there on Maul getting punched in the jaw by Majestic. Those are some nice pages. So, Zealot here mind connects with Miranda the princess. All throughout this issue, the yellow narrative captions are first-person narration from Miranda. We're getting her perspective on things, and she's explaining things in her first-person narration, you know, in effect for the reader regards what's going on. So Zealot tells her to pick out this particular crystal from what is her name again? My mind is just blanking for a second. From her little sister's satchel here, and Savant's satchel, and she needs it in order to tackle Tapestry. So she takes Miranda the princess with her as well. And what is it? Like, they teleport away. And then we get back to the fight, and we've got a nice anchor image here with Warblade tackling Grifter from behind. But it is my opinion that Jim Lee is having some pencil assists on this particular page, whether it be Ryan Benjamin or Dan Norton. My guess, in fact, would be for Ryan Benjamin maybe on this page. There's something about the figure work and the rendering, like, say, for example, of Grifter's trench coat here. It just looks a little softer than is usual for Jim Lee. It's the same on the costuming here of Warblade as well. The rendering of the metallic surfaces is just not Jim Lee's style, really. So it's my view that what we have here is some finishing of his pencil breakdowns by the likes of Ryan Benjamin or Dan Norton. This particular page is inked by Alvey, so this isn't Scott Williams inks. I like this page. I think this is a good page, and I like this particular layout on the page. And Savant throwing to Grifter Zealot's sword, and the Coda sword and cleft blade that is her birthright, but which she doesn't use personally, so she hands them over to Grifter because, of course, he's the only one who has had the privilege as a male to be trained as a Coda. So he faces off now against Warblade with the odds evened by his possession of the sword and the cleft blade. It's a nice image there again, that classic Jim Lee device of putting the characters in silhouette against the background. And let's continue. So again, this is a page where I really think that Jim Lee handed over breakdowns to either Ryan Benjamin or Dan Norton. Just the level of detail isn't there, and there isn't the same crispness in the figure drawing as well. So Yeah, that's my guess on this page. So Soldier here grabs Savant. She's concerned about her satchel. She knows everything that's in it, and she realizes that something's missing. And basically Soldier thinks everything's going to be okay. Zealot knows what she's doing, but Savant says, you don't understand, none of you understand. I've seen Tapestry work, I've felt her power. She spent 100 years trying to remake Zealot in her own image and damn near succeeded. So this is part of this mysterious, so far, like untold history between Zealot and Tapestry. And why is it that Zealot has such fear of Tapestry? Well, we'll get this explained, somewhat explained, in the 6-page backup story coming at the end of the issue. Now, this is a great page here with this anchor image of Tapestry sitting atop the blended form of Providence and Void. And I think that Jim Lee enjoyed himself drawing this particular image. But then the rest of the page is fairly by the numbers, just the shots here, the head shots and the angles, not terribly interesting. And it really gives me the sense that he was putting this issue together in a bit of a rush. And we'll get a little bit more about what was going on in his life on the very last page of the book. So now we've got one of these sideways pages. So I'll just turn that sideways for you, make sure that you can get the full view of the page there on camera. So I really do like this double page vertical image of Zealot in her transformed state, wielding those sorceress type powers that she's tapped into. That's inked by Alvey, by the way, not Scott Williams, and I think he's doing a very good job there on Lee's pencils. And so they attack each other, and it all gets very psychic in the ways that they're going at each other, tapping into the powers of the orbs there, both of them. They take what they need from the seers, from Providence and from Void. So this page here also inked by Alvey. Interesting layout on this page too, reminiscent of the kinds of things that Whilce Portacio would do with layouts. And Savant here is just talking about what's going on between Void, between Tapestry and Zealot. She says that they're evenly matched. Tapestry is the knowledge of the ages and the skill, but Zealot matches her perfectly with her own indomitable will. It even rhymes. One's passion offsets the other's. They're a perfect balance. So how is that balance going to be broken? And here we see the power passing back and forth between them as Tapestry's de-aged and Zealot becomes a crone. So they've reached a stalemate in this. So how's it going to be resolved? Well, Zealot is a strategist, and she does have a plan. And up here we have a switch of perspective. So here's Savannah's looking down at the fight in the warehouse, and now we've got an upshot of her atop this roof beam, watching Miranda here with the crystal. So she recognizes the crystal and what Zealot is up to. Of course, that's why she brought Miranda and had her take the orb shard I'd found ages ago. It's imprinted with Zealot's aura. Trusted into the heart of the Matrix, she and Tapestry are forming. It'll shift the balance of power to her. Okay, so that's the strategy there. But Miranda is blindsided by Soma, who is a slave to Tapestry, and seems to take her life there. But of course, could that really be? Well, not exactly. Miranda's down but not out. And then Savant reaches into her bag for her world walking window, and she uses it to transport Huntsman from the fight. He's obviously tackling Spartan there, into the warehouse in order to assist Miranda and Zealot. And again, this is another page where I'm pretty certain that Jim Lee is handing off breakdowns to Ryan Benjamin or Dan Norton. Like, just look at this panel in particular. This is very much not Jim Lee. Like the choreography is, and the basic anatomy is, but the rendering, but the working up of these images it's too simplistic for Jim Lee. So definitely part and parcel of his handing off breakdowns to guys in the studio like Ryan Benjamin and Dan Norton to help him get these pages done on time and get the issue off to the printers. So Huntsman goes up against Soma, takes him out easily. That's nice. He elbows him in the jaw, and that's Soma knocked out. Savant drops off the roof beam or rafter. Miranda's okay, and she reveals as she comes to that Zealot left a phrase in her head, the Macedonian solution, as she hands the orb shard to Huntsman. Okay, so now we're coming to the denouement, and we've got a lot of explanation of what's going on here about Alexander the Great and the Gordian knot. Readers of Watchmen will know all about that. So Huntsman transforms the orb into a cleft blade, and he launches it into the tussle, into the midst of the tussle between Tapestry and Zealot, and that changes things. So this is a good page here, and this is a good image of Huntsman leaping at the two women with the cleft blade. That's some nice work there, but it's kind of dark in the colors, so you can't exactly see it 100%. This is another page, I'd say. Jim Lee had some ink assists on this, or sorry, rather pencil assists on this page. And here we go. Did it work? Well, there's a big explosion. The warehouse blows up. The dust settles. Tapestry's out of it. We don't hear any more from her. Soma is determined to kill everyone. That's not going to happen because Huntsman says, waste of breath, Soma, waste of effort, you're done, and so is your domina. Give it up while you have the chance. So Soma spies the world walking crystal, and he uses it to escape with Tapestry. And there we are, it's over. But there's one last piece of business, which is that Savant is prepared to kill Zealot if she has been permanently corrupted by the power that she's tapped into. So there's this whole back and forth about who has the right to kill her, and Majestic says that he does as a pure blood Lord of the Cherubim. He can pass sentence and execute it. And Zealot is in agreement too, except that that Voodoo makes the case here, and this calls all the way back to the first issue of the 4-part story when Zealot was training Voodoo. And Voodoo now says that it's time to choose, Zealot, to be mistress of your own fate or another victim. And so Zealot recognizes the words, her own, you cast my own words into my face, Priscilla. I beat my demon, so can you. She says, the weapon is the extension of the flesh of the mind of the soul. That's what you told me, remember? Again, that was in the first issue of the storyline. First rule of the Coda, power is a weapon, you use it or lay it aside as needed, or in this case, allow it to be purged. So Zealot acquiesces that her fate is in Voodoo's hands. So Voodoo works her power and helps Zealot shed the godlike power that she's tapped into, and the power pulses from her in waves sweeping over us all. This is Miranda's first person narration, washing away every vestige of Tapestry's twisted design, making everybody whole once more. But each wave is weaker than the one before. The light from her soul doesn't sparkle quite so bright. So she is giving up that power voluntarily, and she concludes here saying, it's done, I myself. That's a nice image of Zealot with bowed head. And again, another classic trope of Jim Lee's art. So an open border panel with the figures in silhouette, and we have this sense of closure now. And then there's the epilogue. So Alabaster Wu, he was calling in a favor that Marlowe owed him, and what he wants is the dockyard that is owned by Halo Development, and he gives it to him, and he says, by the by, how many people are we talking about bringing here? So Wu says, as many as I can save, if the gods are kind, 1 million. So he's got people to save, but who are they? What's going on? Like, what's the whole backstory? We don't get it. So it still is a mystery at the end. There's only been hints in terms of who exactly this guy is and exactly what it is he's up to. And this is a great shot here, this open border panel, top-down shot on Majestic, Savant and Soldier. Good work on this page by Lee. And then, so they're talking amongst themselves, and then Zealot's walking away, and Huntsman follows her as they look out over the river. And Huntsman says to her, "I'm sorry Tapestry got away." And Zealot responds, "It's not your fight to end, and if it ends with her death, I will mourn that sister of my spirit, evil though she is, as I would the sister of my flesh." So we're going to get a little bit more about the prior relationship with them in the backup story coming up shortly. Then as now, Z says, "Huntsman, my pledge still stands." Then as now, "Huntsman, I will hold you to it." Again, the characters in silhouette, just little details of costume and eyes and mouth left open by Lee. I like that. I always like that device of his. Last page. They kiss, of course. It is a Chris Claremont comic. And Huntsman says, no, this is important. So Zealot asks the question that readers have been asking from the first issue, issue number 10 of this storyline. She says, where will you go? What will you do? And Huntsman's answer is a non-answer. Miranda's called both ways. And then Zealot asks him, who is she to you? And he says, I'm her protector. But who is she? I'll be in touch. No, that's not good enough. I think after 4 issues, we deserve a little bit more information than that. That's too much teasing, too much, holding back on what we deserve to know by this point. And I really would have preferred a lot more information about who exactly Alabaster Wu is, what exactly he's up to, who Huntsman is, who Miranda is, and so on and so forth. And then we've got a little bit of banter there between Grifter and Voodoo regarding Huntsman not sticking around as he walks away with the princess. And the whole thing bookends with Voodoo realizing that she needs to be trained properly. She says here, I can't fly on instinct and dumb luck anymore, Zealot. He used me to kill the Raksha and made me love it. I'll never allow that to happen again. Whatever you're willing to teach me, she says, I'm prepared to learn. And Zealot generously says, then young Coda, let us begin. So that's a nice bookending to this 4-issue storyline. That's good. And then we have this backup where we get a little bit of exactly what was the relationship between Zealot and Tapestry. So nice opening couple of pages here by, flip back here, see who's the artist again, Richard Johnson. So we've got Zealot and its Savant climbing this cliff face, nearly falling off and then arriving. But there's somebody in this cave. Enter freely, Zealot, and of your own will. So what is in here except this old crone? And Zealot needs help with her quote-unquote little sister. She asks the old crone, are you the one folk call the Weaver of Souls? And she implores her for help. The crone says, come sunrise, sweet Savant will be dead. What ails her? She's poisoned. It eats her from within like a cancer. No remedy I know has been able to stop it. Can you help? So the crone says that she'll help, but it's going to cost Zealot. What's the price? So easy to promise, Coda, so easy to renege when the work is done. But Zealot says here, my word, crone, is my bond. I offer you my cleft blade as surety. If I prove false, use it to take my life. So that's got the old woman's attention. She takes the blade and says, do you think because I'm old, I lack both will and skill to do precisely that? And Zealot there with the cleft blade at her throat asks, will you save my sister? The question, my dear, says the crone, is who will save you? First I draw forth blood and then the spirit. And so Zealot sees this version of herself. I seek to show you what that entails, the price. For 100 years it will be. So the price is time and service. What I require of you, Zealot, is service, a small sum of days from you in return for all that remain of your sisters. So Zealot says that she won't betray her oaths as a coda, but the crown is having none of it. No codicils, no qualifications, absolute loyalty, absolute obedience in all ways and all things. So Zealot agrees, and that makes her the crone's slave, as she puts on that choker as a symbol of her enslavement for 100 years. So she says there, in all ways, Tapestry, in all things, for 100 years, I'm yours. And so there we go. We've got a hint of their prior relationship here. But what happened in the course of that 100 years? Well, Tapestry, or rather Savant said that Tapestry tried to make Zealot into her own image, and it didn't work exactly. But we need a little bit more information. Again, this is just a bit of a tease here from Claremont. And then here we go. This is the last element of the issue that needs to be commented on, and it's Jim Lee's editorial letter here at the back, where he talks about how he's taking a sabbatical, primarily to follow through on a promise he made to his wife 2 years earlier, when they had their first child, and now they've had a second child, and he is really and truly taking the sabbatical. So he says, "This is my last issue of Wildcats, and it marks an end of nearly 8 years of working in the trenches. It's been a hell of a time, and while I will be coming back to the business soon enough, some thanks are in order for all the hard work and sacrifices that were made along the way." So he's thanks there for the fans, first and foremost, for Scott Williams, his inker of more than 800 pages, Brandon Choi, his childhood friend, and the writer of Wildcats and other books at Wildstorm. And then these artists, Ryan Benjamin, Dan Norton, Brett Booth, and Bobby Rubio, all of whom were of invaluable assistance, meaning they were doing a little bit of penciling work, backgrounds, finishing pencils for Lee. So he talks about how Wildcats, of course, is going to continue with James Robinson and Travis Charest coming on board as primary creators. He talks about how his very last issue for Image for the foreseeable will be issue 13 of Savage Dragon. But that's it. He says, despite an occasional cover or pin-up by me in upcoming Wildstorm titles, I'm pretty much striking the set and loading up old equipment for the time being, but not without regret. Well, this will be the first time in a long while that I won't have a deadline floating over my head. Quite frankly, I'll miss it. I wonder, though. I'd say he needed a break. But imagine that, like, not 8 years, and the man went from Alpha Flight 50, is it 51 or 53, his first issue, professional work at Marvel, all the way to collaborating on the top-selling single issue of all time of American Comics, X-Men #1, and then launching Image Comics, being a co-founder of Image Comics and doing really well with his titles and creating a whole studio and all the rest of it, and having 2 babies, 1992 and 1994. The man did a lot. He did a lot, so he deserves his sabbatical. He deserves his break. So there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Wildcats number 13. And if you did so, like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.